and on campus to support the teachers, the students, and all staff here at Pathway. Please know that the intent of this appointment is to be very limited for a period of time until we can find the right person to be the leader for the school. Okay, thank you. Please rest assured that you will be kept informed of the progress. We will not be taking questions or discussing the recent incidents of the past week tonight, as they are personnel issues and are subject to privacy laws. But more information about other decisions will be forthcoming. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
I've always told my students and my players that the only way that you get stronger is to put yourself, even though we didn't create it, in uncomfortable situations, right? If you get used to being comfortable, you will never get stronger. In a lot of ways, this is going to make us a stronger community. I don't think is what people understand is that we really are a family, and that's not a bad thing. We will become stronger because of this, but what we need right now is patience and poise, and know that these people will still be here. Okay? Sound good? How many football fans in here of the Pumas? Tomorrow night, all of our athletic activities will resume with the home game right here against last year's defending champion. We're all undefeated, so somebody's going to lose tonight. And tonight was a major victory for us in here as a community. Let's have another one out there tomorrow night. So in true Coach Williams fashion, when you want something, you got to work really hard for it to get it. So we can do it right now if you want. You ready? What's up? What's up? What's up? Folks, thanks for coming out tonight. People will be sticking around, but understand that we don't know a whole lot, but we fully are on board with this. Sound good? The administrative office, we got to get through tomorrow. I need your kids back in class. The teachers will be ready to resume with the regular curriculum. And then the first 2 days of next week for fall break so that we can continue to sort this out. This front office is closed, as well as yours. Okay? So the offices will resume back open here on Wednesday. Cool? Kids, come back tomorrow. Let's get back to what we do. Sound good? Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for continuing with your support. We're going to be good. Let's be really orderly when we get out so that we're all safe and get home safely. I'm going to try to encourage you to go through that door. Sound good? Okay. Thank you. That's it, and I'm asking for you to trust me and trust Matt Metcalf. I didn't. You're good, okay? I know, and I'm telling you right now, I will do anything for you, and that's the only reason I'm standing up here. You imagine that I would be up here if I didn't believe in this? Nobody walked out. Nobody walked out. Listen, stop, hold on a second. This is exactly what they want, and it's not what has happened. Because I know that. I know you'll get answers. I know, and I understand. All I can tell you, and it's only because I have no other power than this, and I probably overstepped it already, I'm sticking my neck out for you because I do it every day for your kids. Okay? Thank you.
Get to your lap here. Yeah.
And the reason why is unclear.
The news upsetting teachers. Some of them decided to walk off the job today in protest. And now tomorrow's school day is going to bring who knows what. A lot of nervous parents and teachers and students as well at Sequoia Pathway High School in Maricopa. And the teachers are not the only ones who are upset. Students and parents are very upset. Jessica Flores is covering the story. She joins us live. Jess.
John Kerry, many students are saying they will not go to classes tomorrow, and at least one teacher already resigned. Today was so chaotic on campus. At one point, the school called police officers to keep the peace. Turmoil on campus caught on camera.
Where are you going? Don't run away. Don't run away from us.
Outraged parents confront the CEO of Sequoia Pathway Academy after they say two popular administrators, Diane Silva and Nate Lama, were forced to resign.
I want some answers. I want some answers as to why they were fired.
Students staged a walkout in protest.
To me, I see them as like role models, and they're my family, and they kind of just took away my family from me.
Michelle Ryer's son is in his senior year at the school.
This is his home away from home, and that's the way all the kids feel.
Do you think he's going to switch schools because of this?
Without the administrators and the teachers, it's not going to be the same school. So yes, we will leave.
This teacher asked not to be identified, but he says he resigned after learning the administrators are out.
They've created a situation here that
And let me see if I can get back to the video that we were watching. Sometimes that auto refresh kicks in on fox10phoenix.com. I apologize. Let's see. It was an interview with one of the parents, and we did break in a little early for this an update on the walkout that happened recently. This is a story from earlier this week, but we were in the gym at the high school getting an update.
A situation here that did not need to be created at all. The leadership was here in place, and to try to remove it or do anything else was unnecessary. So they've caused a bonfire here at this campus that never needed to happen.
We're trying to show everybody that these two people mean a lot to us, and we're not just going to go down without a fight.
The close-knit community now fractured as more parents vow to pull their kids from the school. And we did reach out to the CEO of the school. He has not replied to our request for comment on the situation. As for the students, they plan to protest at the school tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Parents plan to meet Thursday at 6 p.m. to figure out their next steps. Reporting live, I'm Jessica Flores, Fox 10 News.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, and we're going to go straight into some Oregon updates. I have two press conferences for you. One from the, I believe one from the police and one from the hospital.
Saddened by the tragic events that unfolded today at Umpqua Community College. These sort of tragedies aren't supposed to happen here, yet they did, and it leaves tons of questions in our minds. And so, as this is a very active investigation and the investigation continues, there are a few questions that I can answer for you, but there'll be more to come. It's very early in this event, and we are still trying to confirm a great amount of information that is floating around, and a great amount of information that we need to confirm. I want to say first and foremost that our victims and families of our victims are our priority. Everything that we do from here on will be for them. At this time, we are reporting and can confirm 10 fatalities in the shooting. 7 additional injuries. Those that were injured were initially transported to our local hospital, and 3 of those that were critically injured were transferred to another hospital up in the Eugene area. We know there are conflicting reports of the numbers of casualties, and I can tell you that this number is the best, most accurate information we have at this time. The FBI has established a toll-free number for tips and families. That number is 1-800-225-5324. Also can be remembered as 1-800-CALL-FBI. When you do this, you choose option 7. Again, this number is to help reunite and provide information to the families of the victims. This event has been deemed a mass casualty event, which brings with it hundreds of resources to this small community. Along with those resources and the fact that this is a mass casualty incident brings specific protocols that we must follow. That includes specific processes by which the state medical examiner's office may manage identification. And because of these protocols, the need to notify each family, we don't anticipate releasing the names of the fatalities for 24 to 48 hours. The law enforcement investigation into the shooter and into his motivation is ongoing. We are not ready at this time to make any comments about him. Reunification continues at the Douglas County Fairgrounds. Family and students should gather there. There are counselors at the fairgrounds providing assistance to all the folks that are down there. At this time, I'd like to have my Public Information Officer, Corporal Wes Hudson, address some other issues. Thank you.
So we're going to continue to use the hashtag UCC shooting on our Twitter account, which is DouglasCOSO. Further written updates will be posted to our social media accounts, our website, and to flashalerteugene.net. We have a number of agencies that have provided a lot of resources to this incident, and at a future briefing we'll walk through what those are and what that looks like. We also anticipate having another briefing later this evening, and we'll notify you via our social media account and Flash Alert. I have a couple of administrative things to discuss, and that's all the information I have right now.
Since the shooter among the 10 fatalities?
I'm not taking any questions. That's the end of the briefing.
Just for accuracy, of the 10 fatalities, does that include the shooter?
No questions. Thank you. We're going to have another briefing later this evening, and we'll notify you.
What time did vigil start and where?
I don't have that information.
8 o'clock at Sequoia Pathway.
There you go. That was Sheriff John Williams.
Okay, thank you.
Wes Hudson from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We'll get some more details there on the shooting.
We received, as a result of these tragic events, we received 10 patients at Mercy Medical Center today. Of those 10, 3 patients were transferred immediately to a higher level of care. 2 patients were treated and released in a relatively short period of time. 4 patients went to the operating room for various procedures, and unfortunately 1 patient was deceased in the emergency room.
Are you able to say that that patient, was he or she brought to this hospital living and passed away here?
The patient arrived in extremis and passed away in the emergency room.
Doctor, can you talk about some of the injuries that you saw?
You know, all the injuries were a result of gunshot wounds to various parts of the body on that, from extremities to the abdomen and or the chest or bones.
If I'm reading my numbers correctly, you still have 4 patients here then, correct?
We currently have 4 patients who are still here in the hospital.
What are their conditions?
1 is in critical condition. The other 3 remain in stable condition.
Can you say, as far as the injuries, as you mentioned, gunshot wounds, obviously, were some patients hit multiple times?
Some patients did receive multiple gunshot wounds to various parts of the body.
Where were the 3 other patients transferred?
To the best of my knowledge, the 3 other patients were transferred to the Peace Health Riverbend in Springfield.
Via life flight?
I believe so.
Can you talk about the ER and the OR at this point? When these patients, came in, was it chaos? Was it controlled?
I think the best way to describe it is controlled chaos. Obviously, we practice and we do drill for these type of events. It is still, fortunately, rare on that. The emergency department staff, the physicians, the EMS and the first responders really came together as a team to stabilize and then transfer those patients to the operating room. And I'd like to say, I'm amazingly proud of the work of our staff and our physicians. We had retired physicians calling in, asking if they were needed. That's the type of community response that we've received during this.
Have you ever been involved in an incident like this in your career?
In a community with our limited resources, no. In larger metropolitan areas, yes. But this is the first time in Douglas County, in Roseburg, which we have had to face an incident like this, fortunately.
Obviously.
Describe your feelings or describe your emotions when you heard that the Code Blue, Code Zero was coming in and you had multiple gunshot victims. Describe that, please.
Initially, everyone is in a bit of disbelief that, can this happen here? Immediately, though, everyone starts preparing for what do we need to do to take care of these patients. What are our resources? Calling in our resources, calling in the staff, getting ready to triage what we need on that. The next few days are my biggest concerns for our staff, how we support our staff. During these events, everybody pulls together, does an amazing job. The next few days will be difficult.
Kelly, you might be able to better answer this question, and Doctor, you can too, by all means. Can you talk about the support you've gotten from the community? I've heard rumblings of people bringing in coffee, even support from across the country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's been absolutely fantastic for the support we've got here locally, but also nationwide. Also, as you know, we have a very, very busy emergency department, and people come in for different types of events. Even today, during that time, we saw less people than we normally would, and I think that's a very big point that the community said, well, maybe I can just hold off for a few hours or maybe a day to come in for whatever emergency I have because there's, more people that need help right now than just them. We have had different hospitals throughout the country send pizza, flowers to the staff. I mean, I think everybody really grasped the emotional toll this takes on everybody, and they're trying to give as much support as they possibly can.
There's been blood banks around the state calling for donations.
Right.
Have blood transfusions been a problem today?
Blood transfusions were given and administered. Our supplies of blood have been adequate, and the blood bank partners we work with have been able to meet our needs.
We will be having a blood drive here tomorrow at the hospital. So, correct.
12 to 5, Community Cancer Center.
That is because of what happened, right? Or was that already scheduled?
No, that's because of what happened.
Because of what happened.
That's right.
Okay. Anything else that?
Doctor, can you revisit the numbers again? You said there were 10.
Sure.
admitted.
Mercy Medical Center received 10 patients as a result of the events this morning. 3 of them were transferred to a higher level of care, Peace Health River Bend. 2 of them were treated and released quite quickly. 4 of the patients went to the operating room, and 1 patient was deceased in the emergency room at this point.
As far as the 4 who went into surgery, do they remain in surgery at this hour, or are they out of surgery now?
I believe all but 1 are out of surgery at this point.
And your prognosis, do you think they will be injuries that they will be able to survive?
All 4 are doing well and are expected to survive the injuries.
Are they still in? You said there's 1 in critical, or are they still being operated on?
There is 1 in critical condition, 3 are stable, 1, I believe, still remains in the operating room at this point.
Doctor, can you tell us where the wounds were on each victim? You couldn't, how many times they were fired?
You know, there are multiple victims, so there are multiple places from the extremities, hands, abdomen, legs, back, spine are the ones that I am aware of.
And all from single gunshot to multiple gunshot, or all multiple?
Both single and multiple.
The 3 that were transferred, they went to Sacred?
They went to
Springfield?
To Springfield, River Bend.
Okay.
Correct. It is a long name.
Explain the reason for the transfer. Obviously, a higher level of care, as you said. What specifically were they transferred for?
They were transferred for services which we do not have here at Mercy Medical Center: neurosurgery, other type of injuries such as that.
Well, can you just describe your emotions when you heard you had multiple victims coming in?
Yeah, I got to tell you, frankly, I almost broke down. It just really kind of took me to my core of emotions. It was just really, really difficult to kind of keep my composure for that first 4 or 5 minutes once we found out of what occurred.
Can you describe what the waiting rooms look like right now? I mean, are there family, friends flooding those areas?
No, actually, I think that's all been taken care of. We're at a pretty calm state right now. I've taken care of all the folks that came in. I know there was a staging area out at the county fairgrounds that the sheriff's office put together. So we're pretty much right back to normal operations at this time. I want to go back to one point you made, because one thing I forgot to mention was the community support. We had numerous people from our staff that had the day off that came in to help out in any way they possibly can. I mean, it was a phenomenal response without even asking anybody. They just came in to take care of our community for us.
Speaks volumes about this community.
It's super duper for us.
You know, I want to also reflect the first responders, the police, the paramedics. They are the ones dealing with this even more so acutely than we are here, and they pulled together, and I think the response you've seen out of a small community speaks volumes, and they deserve great kudos for that.
Kelly, what do you need from the public now? What can they do to help you?
Well, I think the big thing right now is obviously, you know, an emotional caring and prayers for the families. I think that's where we really need to work together on it. Likewise, I think whether it's a first responder or a hospital person or maybe it's a community person, to just give them a lot of support, because we need some peaceful time to try to get this through us, and then that way we can, you know, repair our emotions and move forward and really grow as a community to be closer together. So I think it's just a time thing, and be peaceful with each other over the next few weeks.
We heard there's a vigil this evening. Do you either of you plan on being there?
I wasn't aware there was a vigil. I'm sure many of us will be.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Did I say you guys will brief again at 6 a.m. tomorrow?
Southern Oregon.
Yeah. And again, we are awaiting another live update from Oregon, but let me play one for you from earlier in the day. so you can kind of grasp how the day unfolded. And we are also expecting to get that vigil at approximately 8 p.m. Hopefully that's our time, but we'll be getting that at 8 p.m. as well.
At the college. Officers from around the county immediately responded to the college, and upon arriving there, they located the shooter in one of the buildings. Officers engaged that suspect. There was an exchange of gunfire. The shooter threat was neutralized, and officers continued to sweep the campus looking for other threats. We have confirmed that there is confirmed injuries and there are confirmed fatalities. And at this point, it is a very active scene. It's a very active investigation, and that is really all at this point that I am prepared to share, or that I can share.
The Oregon Attorney General said 13 dead. Can you confirm that?
I cannot. I've heard varying numbers, and I don't want to report on a number that is inaccurate. I can tell you that we have got a tremendous amount of law enforcement help. I have the Oregon State Police assisting. We have all the local agencies, including the Roseburg Police, some of the other smaller municipalities, the Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, a lot of support in this investigation.
Can you tell us anything about the shooter or what weapon was used?
At this point, I cannot. I can tell you the shooter was a male subject, and I have no further information beyond that.
Can you confirm if he's alive or dead?
The shooter is deceased.
Can we confirm how many wounded?
I'm sorry?
Can we confirm how many wounded?
I cannot at this time, no.
What is this like for your deputies in a community this size where everyone knows someone on the campus?
I'm sure it's very frightening for a lot of people that were responding. You're right, this is a small community. It's a community college, so a lot of our friends and family attend this college. And it was a situation that there was no answers for quite some time. I personally know of a number of people that I work with that had very strong concerns about the welfare of loved ones that are going to school there.
Can you confirm if there was a posting on a Facebook page warning that this might happen, or to stay away from school?
I haven't heard that comment, no, or can't comment on that.
Was this contained to just one classroom, or?
At this point, I can't tell you that. It's under investigation, and I don't know.
Can you tell us where he was shot? I mean, what part of the campus? Was it in the classroom where the shootings occurred?
Where he was?
Yeah, where he was shot.
I don't know at this point. I know officers engaged him somewhere near a classroom, but I can't tell you if it was in the classroom or outside of the classroom.
Do you know if he fired on police officers?
My understanding is yes, he did.
And is it 13 dead in the shooter, or is it not?
I didn't say there was how many fatalities there were at this point. I don't know. The shooter is deceased.
Can you confirm?
I can tell you again. I have the district attorney here, and we have activated the major crimes team. And so, along with the major crimes team and the other agencies that I mentioned, we will be conducting a thorough, and I'm sure it'll be a rather lengthy investigation into why and how many and all the answers that we can possibly
Sheriff,
determine.
can you tell us, are those helicopters taking people to the hospital, or?
No, I believe they're press helicopters. I don't know.
One more time with the type of weapon. Are you saying it's a rifle or a handgun or anything like that?
I don't know.
Sheriff Hamlin, was it in the science building, the majority of it?
I don't know that.
Sheriff, there's a national spotlight suddenly on Roseburg. For people who may not be familiar with the community, can you just talk a little bit about Roseburg so people nationwide can understand what kind of place this is? And
Sure. Douglas County is a
timber community. We have roughly 107,000 people that live in the county here. Umpqua Community College is the only higher education facility that we have in Douglas County. There are other community colleges in surrounding counties, and of course the University of Oregon would be the closest university to this community. There's a lot of students that attend the college that are either in their first couple of years of higher education, or a lot of misplaced employees that have gone back to school to learn new trades and get an education. So,
And is a fairly peaceful community, fairly low crime rate, or?
It is a peaceful community. I mean, we have our share of crime like any small community, but certainly this is a huge shock to the entire community to have this level of crime and incident occur in our college or school system.
Are you happy with the response of law enforcement in this situation?
I am extremely happy with the response. I've got fellow sheriffs here that have been through similar situations up in the Willamette Valley that have come to provide support and assistance. And like I said, the Oregon State Police have provided us with a tremendous amount of resources, and I couldn't be happier.
How many people do you think are on campus trying to investigate the situation?
Superintendent, do you know?
I couldn't.
I'm guessing we have well over 100 detectives and officers, uniformed officers out there.
Were any officers injured?
Where their loved ones are?
No, there's been no report of any of the officers injured.
What do you suggest the public do right now?
I'm sorry?
What do you suggest the public should do right now? Should they avoid the area, or?
My suggestion is that they think of the family of the victims and be aware of their anguish and think of them first. The families of the victims are the ones that are going to have the most difficult days ahead.
Were there any deputies on campus when the incident occurred, or was OSP the first having an office here?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which officers arrived first. There was 2 or 3 of them, I believe, that arrived about the same time.
Did you have reason to think that there might be explosives, or that there was a reason to sweep the whole campus?
Yeah, that is part of the investigation to try to determine if that's a threat. We haven't had any indication that it is at this time.
And is there any indication that there's anyone else involved in the shooting?
That it's too early in the investigation to make that determination.
Do you have armed security guards on campus?
Do what?
Do you have armed security guards on campus?
No, I do not.
Does Douglas County still have a SWAT team? They did.
We have a tactical response team, yes.
Were they the ones who shot?
No, it was the responding officers that got there first.
Have families been started to get notified about the deceased in this incident?
That I'm not sure at this point.
Do you know whether was the shooter a student at the community college?
I'm sorry?
Do you know whether the shooter was a student at the community college?
I do not.
Have the local hospitals been able to handle the casualties, or do they had to go elsewhere?
That'd be a good question for them. I haven't heard how overloaded they've been with the injured. I did hear rumor that a couple of the patients were shipped to other area hospitals or out-of-area hospitals.
And practically, do you have a PIO and do you have another press event scheduled after this?
I do. Corporal Hudson is here in the crowd, and he will be putting out more information as it becomes available.
What's kind of the next step in the investigation?
Currently, we've got more of the compound to do a thorough search of. We have to process the scene or scenes where the shooting occurred. We have a parking lot full of vehicles out there that we have to process and search. And obviously, we have just a ton of interviews to conduct. Just a moment. My PIO wanted to.
Well, it is still too early to know all of the facts. I know I am joined by my fellow Oregonians and Americans in profound dismay and heartbreak at this tragedy at Umpqua Community College. Facts are still emerging. We know now there were casualties and confirmed injuries. Our top priority now is the medical treatment for victims, and the security of the campus. We have confirmation that the shooter is deceased. He is a 20-year-old male. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We are holding the community of Douglas County in our hearts today. The work that first responders have done is harrowing. To our first responders, thank you for your work as this community reels from grief. I am leaving now to head to Roseburg to be with the community there. Oregon State Superintendent Rich Evans is here to make additional remarks. Please take care.
The first 911 calls came in the Roseburg area at 10:38 this morning. All law enforcement in the area responded immediately to the campus. The active shooter was engaged by law enforcement and later confirmed to be deceased. Our number one priority right now is to make sure that the scene is secure and the victims are treated, and making sure that we have a complete crime scene, and that we continue to make sure that there are no additional threats. The Oregon State Police is combining with all the local law enforcement, including the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, in making sure that we are doing all the things that the community needs us to do. We have set up a command center. We have set up an additional area for media relations. Our PIO is there, Lieutenant Bill Fugate, to assist you in the future. We're working through a family unification center. As we know, the families in these type of events become very frazzled, and they continue to make sure that we're communicating what we need to with them as we move forward. I would like to remind the media that these scenes are very dynamic and they change. Our number one priority is making sure that all victims are safe, and so additional information may take some time for us to make sure that we can get that information accurately to you, but our number one priority right now is making sure that we take care of the victims, the families, and the community of Roseburg. I would like to thank the first responders that responded today in a timely manner, and thank you.
I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to take any more questions today, so there's a command center in Roseburg, and hopefully we'll be able to talk with you there. Thanks.
And communities across the country.
All right, guys. So you heard from the sheriff earlier, then you heard from the governor of Oregon. The only thing we can confirm, the shooter is a 20-year-old male. We still don't have official word as far as how many people were shot, how many people were killed. We're hearing different reports. We've heard various numbers throughout the morning and afternoon, anywhere from 10 to 15 people killed. We've
across the country, forced to relieve their own anguish, and parents across the country who are scared because they know it might have been their families or their children. I've been to Roseburg, Oregon. There are really good people there. I want to thank all the first responders whose bravery likely saved some lives today. Federal law enforcement has been on the scene in a supporting role, and we've offered to stay and help as much as Roseburg needs for as long as they need. In the coming days, we'll learn about the victims, young men and women who were studying and learning and working hard, their eyes set on the future, their dreams on what they could make of their lives. And America will wrap everyone who's grieving with our prayers and our love. But as I said just a few months ago, and I said a few months before that, and I said each time we see one of these mass shootings, our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It's not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. Next week, or a couple of months from now. We don't yet know why this individual did what he did. And it's fair to say that anybody who does this has a sickness in their minds, regardless of what they think their motivations may be. But we are not the only country on earth that has people with mental illnesses or want to do harm to other people. We are the only advanced country on earth that sees these kinds of mass shootings every few months. Earlier this year, I answered a question in an interview by saying, the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. And later that day, there was a mass shooting at a movie theater in Lafayette, Louisiana. That day. Somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this. We talked about this after Columbine and Blacksburg, after Tucson, after Newtown, after Aurora, after Charleston. It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun. And what's become routine, of course, is the response of those who oppose any kind of common sense gun legislation. Right now, I can imagine the press releases being cranked out. We need more guns, they'll argue. Fewer gun safety laws. Does anybody really believe that? There are scores of responsible gun owners in this country. They know that's not true. We know because of the polling that says the majority of Americans understand we should be changing these laws, including the majority of responsible, law-abiding gun owners. There is a gun for roughly every man, woman, and child in America. So how can you, with a straight face, make the argument that more guns will make us safer? We know that states with the most gun laws tend to have the fewest gun deaths. So the notion that gun laws don't work or just will make it harder for law-abiding citizens and criminals will still get their guns, it's not borne out by the evidence. We know that other countries, in response to one mass shooting, have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, countries like ours. So we know there are ways to prevent it. And of course, what's also routine is that somebody somewhere will comment and say, Obama politicized this issue. Well, this is something we should politicize. It is relevant to our common life together, to the body politic. I would ask news organizations, because I won't put these facts forward, have news organizations tally up the number of Americans who've been killed through terrorist attacks over the last decade and the number of Americans who've been killed by gun violence. And post those side by side on your news reports. This won't be information coming from me, it will be coming from you. We spend over $1 trillion and pass countless laws and devote entire agencies to preventing terrorist attacks on our soil, and rightfully so. And yet, we have a Congress that explicitly blocks us from even collecting data on how we could potentially reduce gun deaths. How can that be? This is a political choice that we make to allow this to happen every few months in America. We collectively are answerable to those families who lose their loved ones because of our inaction. When Americans are killed in mine disasters, we work to make mines safer. When Americans are killed in floods and hurricanes, we make communities safer. When roads are unsafe, we fix them to reduce auto fatalities. We have seatbelt laws because we know it saves lives. So the notion that gun violence is somehow different, that our freedom and our Constitution prohibits any modest regulation of how we use a deadly weapon, when there are law-abiding gun owners all across the country who could hunt and protect their families and do everything they do under such regulations. Doesn't make sense. So, tonight, as those of us who are lucky enough to hug our kids a little closer, are thinking about the families who aren't so fortunate, I'd ask the American people to think about how they can get our government to change these laws and to save lives and to let young people grow up. And that will require a change of politics on this issue. And it will require that the American people, individually, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, when you decide to vote for somebody, are making a determination as to whether this cause of continuing death for innocent people should be a relevant factor in your decision. If you think this is a problem, then you should expect your elected officials to reflect your views. And I would particularly ask America's gun owners who are using those guns properly, safely, to hunt, for sport, for protecting their families, to think about whether your views are properly being represented by the organization that suggests it's speaking for you. And each time this happens, I'm going to bring this up. Each time this happens, I am going to say that we can actually do something about it, but we're going to have to change our laws. And this is not something I can do by myself. I've got to have a Congress, and I've got to have state legislatures and governors who are willing to work with me on this. I hope and pray that I don't have to come out again during my tenure as president to offer my condolences to families in these circumstances. But based on my experience as president, I can't guarantee that. And that's terrible to say. and it can change. May God bless the memories of those who were killed today. May He bring comfort to their families and courage to the injured as they fight their way back. And may He give us the strength to come together and find the courage to change. Thank you.
All right, I saw in the chat room some requests for local news. I do have some local news that's going to be coming up for you towards the end of the show. But what I have for you right now is Hillary Clinton from earlier today. I also have a few minutes of Joe Biden. So you're going to get some back-to-back politics and potential Democratic candidates for president, as Joe Biden has not announced yet, but we wait with bated breath because we're just waiting for him to announce, especially with some of the scandal that's been going on in regards to Clinton. So what I do have for you right now is Hillary Clinton. Will transition into some Joe Biden, and then I've got a lot of local news for you in case you are jonesing for some local news or you're a local news fan. Additionally, we are waiting for a breaking press conference out of Oregon in regards to the shooting. If we get that, I'll cut to that. And if we get some visuals out of Oregon of the vigil, I will bring that to you too. But those are potential satellite things that I'm potentially going to get in on my satellite. I don't have it yet. So right now we'll go to Hillary, plan after that Joe, then I'll give you some local news, and if I can get any of the main anchors who are all off right now enjoying their lunch break, if I can get any of Fox 10 Phoenix's main anchors, John Hook, Carrie Lake, Troy Hayden, to sit down and give us a few words in regards to today's horrible, horrible shooting out of Oregon, I will absolutely do that. They are currently not in though, so let's take you to Clinton right now.
Themselves into recovery, Mayor. And then because of your programs and your work, and then your Attorney General and her campaign did the same thing. Talked about removing the stigma. But I don't think even a state that is blessed with leaders like this and others who have been mentioned can do this alone. That's why we need a federal program that can partner with states and cities. I want to work with law enforcement. There's a great example. I know Senator Ferrante is here somewhere from Gloucester. There she is. Thank you, Senator. You know, when we get to the Q&A, I want her to tell us in specifics, because what the police department in Gloucester has done should be an example for police departments everywhere, not just in Massachusetts, but across America. And both the mayor and the attorney general mentioned Narcan, you know, the antidote to heroin overdose. And I want it to be in more places than law enforcement. First and foremost, it needs to be with the EMTs, the paramedics, police, fire. But it also needs to be on college campuses. It needs to be in workplaces. It needs to be in community centers. Because, you know, it saves people's lives. There's nothing more important. Save somebody's life. Give somebody a second chance. So with this program I've rolled out, I have said it would take $10 billion over 10 years. $7.5 billion would go to support states and cities that have good plans. And we would move, as the mayor and I were talking backstage, toward a results-based program. Those states, those cities that are stepping up are going to get the funds. And then I hope that will serve as an example to others, because we still have some denial going on here. It's not just, you know, the name of a river in Egypt. We got folks who don't want to talk about this, or who want to continue the stigma or walk away from those who are in need. So we've got to set examples. We've got to lift up the best programs. We have to provide, you know, replication. And then $2.5 billion, we've got to provide more services to institutions like the one Dr. Jordan runs, DIMIC. Because when you are in need or a family member is in need, you should have a place to go right there and then that will take you in and will support you. And then final point I want to make, the sheriff is here somewhere. I saw the sheriff. There's the sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. The sheriff and I were talking. If you don't care about this issue, if you don't think it's an epidemic, if you don't want to help people get the treatment, if you don't want to focus on prevention, then think about the money. Let's be just really blunt about this. Most people are ending up in prison and in jail because there is an overlap between mental health problems that people self-medicate with alcohol and drugs and oftentimes end up in trouble of some sort or another. And, Sheriff, you told me it costs $50,000 to incarcerate? Annually for each person, each inmate we're talking about. A person who should be in treatment for a lot less than that. And so I want to end by just applauding all of you who are part of the recovery community. I want to really express my appreciation to you for your willingness to raise your hands and speak to people and be out there on the front lines trying to help others. And I want to provide you more help so that you can do even more on behalf of those who look to you and take that hand that you hold out to them. And somebody who's been doing that a really long time is Joanne. And so I want her to talk to us about what she's been doing.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for caring about all of us and all of our families and all of our loved ones who struggle or are in recovery or who have passed on. I can't tell you how refreshing this is. I've been out here for a long time, 11 years. I've been running Learn to Cope, and I don't do this alone. There's an amazing amount of families, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, children that give back every single week. Helping a mother or father or grandmother or grandfather get through the day. They're either raising their grandchildren, like you mentioned, or they're burying their sons or daughters. My friend Annie here, beautiful Annie, she's so brave. She's here. She just lost her son, Patrick. And Jennifer, his soulmate, is here with her, who Patrick's son no longer has a father. He would have had a year clean and sober just a few weeks ago. He tried so hard, and he did so well, and he loved his family so much. And this is the story that we hear every day. We're losing so many people. I've been doing this work since I needed help back in 2002 when there really wasn't much help for families. And no one really knew what OxyContin was. And OxyContin had sort of seeped under everybody's doorways. And I was unsuspecting, my husband was unsuspecting, our family, even my loved one that got addicted was unsuspecting when he tried it. He thought he'd be okay the next day. Just like so many other young people today, tomorrow, and yesterday. But this drug was unleashed out into the public, and the police weren't prepared, parents weren't prepared, treatment centers weren't prepared, and no one knew, even if they were prescribed it after a surgery, even the doctors weren't prepared. They were told it was safe for moderate pain, and that's, I think, where this epidemic began. And thank you. So what's really near and dear to my heart is everything that's been mentioned today, but also the overprescribing, the education for the medical community, the education for parents who have athletes, cheerleaders, football players that might end up in an emergency room, and teaching them to ask questions but when they get a prescription, or if they get a prescription with 30 pills in the bottle that, they might not need that for 30 days. There's so many legs to this. But Narcan, we give out Narcan. Many of our parents have used it and saved their own sons and daughters. It's so necessary. I'm so thankful to Attorney General Maura Healey for the work she's been doing and for the grace that she's shown our families since the day she took office, battling with, on insurance, parity, having Narcan available, making it affordable when the price was going to go up. The advocacy of so many people, everyone in this room, everyone that's at our meetings or other coalitions around the state, the people in recovery are my favorite and the most important people that speak up. And Mayor Marty Walsh, being so brave and talking, about his own recovery and the stigma. The stigma is starting to go away, and when the stigma goes away, changes are made. My loved one is in long-term recovery today and lives a great life, and I'm so proud and I'm so thankful that he's alive and well. But I want that for everybody, and I'm tired of going to funerals and our staff in our office. Some weeks it's multiple deaths per week. We need to do something about that. And having a federal partner, Hillary Clinton, thank you. And
thank you, Joanne.
I'm praying that happens.
Thank you, Joanne. So we would like to take some questions from the audience. And I know that there are a lot, so I'm going to try to get to as many as I can with the time that we have. Sir, on the side. We have a mic that can come to you right behind you.
I'd just like to, thank Mara for what she did. I met her, and she was running for the Attorney General, and she said she'd give me a call. She stood up for me, and I talked to Joanne on the phone, and Catherine Madden, and Hillary. We're in the ring. Mara's a fighter, And if you're with Mara, I don't have to be with you, because. I'm not here to talk about my story, but if a kid has autism, a kid's mentally challenged, whatever, what we have to do with parents is stand up for him. My son was an addict for 10 years, and we were just happy to have him come over and wash the dishes while he was passing out. And that's sad. And there was nothing we could do but be there for him. And I just want to really thank Mara. I love you. Thank you so much. And Hillary, you're in the fight. You got to stay in the ring with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll take another question. Let's see. The mics are hard to get to, but I'll take you, ma'am, in the middle there. We need to get a mic to you. Sorry, everyone's sort of. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. My name's Annie. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, which means I haven't had a drink or a drug in 33 years.
Congratulations.
I buried my best friend when I was 16. I've buried over 100 people in my lifetime prematurely. This has got to stop. I lived through the HIV thing in the Reagan years when it wasn't mentioned on a federal level, and I feel like the nightmare is happening again. We'll be in Washington this weekend. And Joanne, correct me if I'm wrong, last year at the Fed Up rally, I found out that we've had more ODs than World War II, Vietnam, and Korea combined fatalities. When the first case of Ebola came in, they wanted $5 billion to do it, and they gave us 120. That's what they think of us. I'm proud of my recovery. I want other people to come on my journey with me. I'm thrilled that somebody's talking about this on a federal level, and it's unfortunate until it became a middle-class white thing in the last 2 years. Because when my friends in poor communities, indigent communities, people of color, people of lower socioeconomic people were dying, nobody talked about this at all. at all. I'm so thrilled. Joanne, I've known since 2002. I'm thrilled. I follow wherever she goes. It's like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll talk. Maura Healy, I just saw her at a conference, and she knew my name. I was, like, blown away, you know? I know I'm not little. And I had purple hair last week, so. But I wanted to thank you and say, you know, I don't understand why there isn't a federal response, a larger federal response. There has been a federal response. It's just been inept, as far as I'm concerned. And I just hope, not that I think this is going to happen, but if you don't win, that you'll stay on with the fight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take another question. I'll take the gentleman right there in the aisle there. Yes, sir. Right behind. There you go. Yes, please stand.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is a question for Secretary Clinton. Thank you so much for having the leadership to step up and actually help fight this epidemic. I'm a public health professional, and I just love that you're doing this. This is amazing, and all of you for continued leadership. But when I think about substance abuse as an epidemic and a public health professional, I also think of some other major disease issues that come up at the same time. You know, they kind of overlap in the same way that you mentioned earlier. And one of them being the global AIDS epidemic, you know, not only in Boston, but globally. And, you know, I wanted to thank you as well for your work there and continued support on that front. In particular, in New Hampshire, you actually just recently committed to getting 30 million people on AIDS treatment by 2020, and I wanted to thank you so much for that. That means so much to us all. And I'm wondering now if today you'd be willing to commit once again to doubling that number, or supporting to double the number of people on AIDS treatment by the United States government as president.
Well, let me say this real quickly. I feel very strongly that the United States, and I hope every American here understands what an important role you, our taxpayers, and our government has played in getting people on treatment for HIV and AIDS around the world. And when I was Secretary of State, we had 1.7 million people that we were treating through our government. I was able to triple that number in 4 years without raising another penny to do it, because we got more efficient and we moved to generic drugs. If we can continue to drive the cost of drugs down and improve delivery, I don't know if I can get to double of 30 million, which is what I think you were asking me. Let's get to 30 million first, yay, and then we'll go from there. But the question you ask, I want to bring it back to the substance abuse issue, because you're right. Things are related, and one of the ways they're related is the cost of drugs for treating people. That's why what Maura did on getting the drug costs down for Narcan was so important. It's something my husband has been doing through the Clinton Foundation, negotiating to get the drug, getting the drugs down, getting more delivery by nasal spray as opposed to injection. And when it comes to OxyContin and the other opioids, somebody alluded to this. This, in many ways, the heroin epidemic is a prescription drug-created epidemic. And so part of what I want to do is to go back to what Joanne was saying and to make a commitment that we have got to take another look at the ease with which the opioids are being prescribed. And I am very concerned that the FDA has approved a form of opioids for children. And I find that absolutely incomprehensible. So, yes, drugs like to treat HIV/AIDS or Narcan to, reverse an overdose, absolutely important. They need to be available. We've got to get the costs down. I will continue to work on that. But we got to stop and ask ourselves, what are we doing? And as we know, and I'm sure Dr. Jordan can enlighten us on this even more, there are other ways to treat pain. We need to do a better job, and this is in my plan, of working with and training, and if necessary, retraining prescribers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and others about the threats and dangers of just giving somebody 30 pills. And we've got to get control over the dispensing of opioids, because what has happened, and it's really perverse when you stop to think about it, they were so readily available, and then people tried to tighten them up, and they got too expensive for people who were addicted to the opioids, which is one of the reasons they went to the heroin. So this is a vicious downward spiral, and I'm going to direct the FDA to take another look and do a much better job at seeing who should receive these drugs, in what doses, for how long.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton. Our representative from Gloucester, I know you have an incredible example of how the police force is working on this issue. Could you please share that?
Yes, thank you, and I want to thank the Secretary for coming today, the Mayor and the Attorney General for all of their work. Secretary Clinton, before I start telling you about the success we've had in Gloucester, I just want to say two things that I know my chief would want to say. One is he describes this no longer as an issue. This is a movement. This is everybody coming together to say this has to stop. And we've been texting during this forum, and he said, make sure Hillary Clinton knows one thing. Partners are great, and we need partners, but we truly need a champion. So please, please, please be our champion.
Thank you. Jack Kelly has a question. Jack Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh. I know that you...
Good evening. Again, I want to remind everyone that our focus tonight is on the families and of the victims of today's horrific incident. We have paired up deputies and detectives with the family members of the deceased to help work through the process of grieving and answering questions to the families of these victims. Also, in an attempt to help identify the victims that we have mentioned earlier. As we talked previously, this is considered a mass casualty, and with a mass casualty comes protocols that will likely result in us not being able to release the names of the victims until at least tomorrow. Obviously, notifications of the families is our priority, and we would ask that the media respect that. Respect the victims and respect the families as they manage these most difficult times. We have information that leads us to believe that we know who the shooter is. The official ID will come from the medical examiner's office. Let me be very clear. I will not name the shooter. I will not give him the credit he probably sought prior to this horrific and cowardly act. Media will get the name confirmed in time, but you will never hear me mention his name. We would encourage media and the community to avoid using it. We encourage you to not repeat it. We encourage you not to glorify and create sensationalism for him. He in no way deserves this. Focus your attention on the victims and the families and helping them get through this difficult time. We do know that we have at least 2 heroic officers who responded into the building within minutes and exchanged gunfire with the suspect. The Oregon State Police is handling the aspect of the officer-involved shooting and will release any information surrounding that portion of the investigation at some point in the future. Tactical teams and bomb squads have cleared all of the buildings on the campus. They are currently going through the hundreds of vehicles that are parked in the parking lots to clear those as well. Evidence teams from the FBI and from the Oregon State Police are working to process the crime scene. Again, I want to thank the hundreds of law enforcement officers, mental health counselors, victim specialists, and others from all over this state that have responded here today to help my agency and to help this community. With that, I would like to introduce the president of the Umpqua Community College, Rita Cavett.
Thank you very much. I'd like to begin by offering my heartfelt condolences and the condolences of everyone connected with UCC to the families of anybody who was hurt today in any way, emotionally or physically. This has been a long, sad, tragic day at UCC, and the thing that we should take away from it is the power that love can bring to this community. We saw people rush to our help, rush to assist us, rush to comfort us. People all over the community came in. I think that's one of the blessings of a small town, is that we're so interconnected. Even though I've only been here a short period of time, the friends that I knew we had all came and did everything they possibly could. They're still here helping us, and they will continue to help us as we go back to normalcy. This is going to take us some time, and we need the patience of the community, but we plan to have the college functioning, safe, and comforting as soon as possible for our students to return. This is a crisis, and we are asking for help and receiving help. It's important, I think, we can focus on what would cause somebody to do this horrendous act, and I absolutely agree with the previous statement that the focus should be on how many people opened their hearts to help us today. Thank you.
I will be headed over to the candlelight vigil now, and with that I will ask my Public Information Officer, Corporal Wes Hudson, to come up and answer any questions and discuss any other administrative issues.
So just a couple of items here. We will be continuing to post information to our Twitter account, and we're using the hashtag UCC shooting, and that's at Douglas COSO. Further updates will be posted to that Twitter account, as well as flashalerteugene.net. It's not determined when the next briefing will be, but when that's decided, we will post that information, flashalert.net, and our social media accounts. And that's all I have. If I just have a couple of logistics items, if you could just bear with me for a few minutes here.
Do you suspect, though, we're going to have a briefing tonight, or is that still not clear?
Not determined.
Okay.
These two officers that he mentioned, what agency do they belong to?
We're not taking any questions tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
When do you expect to get a new update? Can you just spell your name for us?
DWESHUTSON. HUTSON.
First name, sir?
DWES. DWES.
Is there an update on the 3 victims that were transferred to Eugene Critical?
I have no further information for you.
What is the address of the vigil?
Logistics-wise, we need to talk about logistics for you folks, okay? This is the last briefing we're going to have here. And we are not going to move to the Parks Department like we had planned. We're going to move you into town to the Roseburg Public Safety Center. It's located at 700 Southeast Douglas Avenue. And they have facilities that can accommodate all of you and our briefings.
700, again, the address is 700 Southeast Douglas Avenue?
Correct, 700 Southeast Douglas Avenue in Roseburg.
And it is what center?
I'm sorry?
What center is it?
Roseburg Public Safety Center.
And at this time,
the next press conference will be?
I'm sorry?
You know when the next press conference will be, sir?
We don't know yet, but it will be there.
And one more time, the address, 700 Southeast Douglas Avenue?
Yes.
Great.
Roseburg.
And where's this vigil taking place?
The vigil is at Stewart Park.
And where's that?
It's in Roseburg.
Okay.
On Stewart Park Drive.
Okay, I'll find out. Thank you.
Stewart Park Drive.
Corporal Hudson, and just a quick question, is public safety at risk? Do you know this is an isolated incident?
No.
Are you staying down here tonight? Yeah.
Which one is mine?
All right, now we will be taking you live to that vigil as we get it, but we did just lose our sound at that press conference. Not much new information other than that we are going to change the location of these briefings and that the medical examiner will give us the name of the suspect. However, they did stress and ask that the media not sensationalize it and not, well, we were talking about this earlier, the no notoriety pledge that initially it was created by the victims of the Aurora theater shooting. They asked that the media and people not use the shooter's face and name, and a lot of people attempted to do that, although it didn't completely take off. But you hear that they're asking that we do the same. They're going to give us the suspect's name. He's deceased. However, they're asking that we not make him notorious, which is what the officials are saying that he basically was pursuing. He wanted notoriety, so he wanted the attention. So I personally will pledge to do that. I will pledge to not use his name, and I'm sure we'll show you his face upon reveal, but I will pledge to not shove that in your face, because I agree with that. But we will be headed to the vigil soon. I don't have a shot from that yet, but I imagine that I will, coming up here any minute now. It'll take, I'm sure, a while for our camera crew to get from point A to point B. Until then, we'll head back to Hillary Clinton for a few minutes, and once I get that live shot up, I will bring that to you. But a sad day in Oregon, and I will pledge to you not to show you his face, not to make him the whatever it is what he was trying to be. What a horrible way to go out, and why would you want that to be your legacy? It's pretty disgusting.
And make sure Hillary Clinton knows one thing. Partners are great and we need partners, but we truly need a champion. So please, please, please be our champion.
Thank you. Jack Kelly has a question. Jack Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh. I know that you told her to say that, so.
I knew it. I'm psyched.
It's good to have high friends, I guess. I just wanted to say that in 2013, like most people on the stage, I ran for political office, and like yourself, Mayor, I talked openly about my recovery. I felt it was important to run as a political candidate talking that I was an ex-heroin addict and had got clean and sober. And in October 12th, I'll celebrate 12 years. So, but there's a larger point that I want to talk to people in the audience. Secretary Clinton is going to make this a national issue for us. We owe it to her to make sure that she becomes the next president. And the reason that I state this, a lot of people have done a lot of good work in recovery, and we tell our stories. Some of them are tragic, some of them are hope. But without political power, it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. This gentleman talked about what happened with the AIDS crisis. If you look at what people that were in the active community trying to get money for AIDS and HIV, it was because they got proactive and got people elected. So if you believe in this cause, be a champion and get Hillary Clinton elected your next president. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. We have a question here.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I am very excited to be here. This is such a thrill. I am a student at, grad student at Simmons Social Work, School of Social Work. I also work in the field for several years, and I am in recovery myself. It's overwhelming, the work that needs to be done for substance abuse. It affects so many areas. One thing that I have chosen to do is to call people with addictions and no longer substance abuse, just because using the word abuse has a negative connotation to it. So addictions is what I specialize or am going to continue to specialize in. One of my concerns is that we've had, can I just hold that? Okay, we've been treating people for years, decades. And it seems to be almost the same type of treatment, especially with mass health, public treatment facilities. Lots of 12-step, which is very effective, okay? But we need more. There's more out there. There's more evidence. There's more mindful treatments. Meditation is very scientifically proven that is very effective with anxiety and addictions and all other disorders. So we need to move. We need to increase the standard of care. And I think that the bridge needs to be gapped between public and private, because the private does get that.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. I think you're right on top. You're right on the button. DMIC, really, we provide yoga, we provide meditation within our detox and our halfway houses. So you raise a really important point. I'd like to get another question, please. This young lady over here on the side there.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Newton, Massachusetts. But I also work to get young people registered to vote to turn out. So I have a little adrenaline. Feels like I'm talking to rock stars. I wanted to ask if any of you could speak to how some of these programs or some of these resources will be specifically available to veterans.
Let me start on this, and as I was listening to the last the woman commenting in the front row there, and then Dr. Jordan's response about different kinds of treatment approaches. This is especially necessary with our veterans. We are losing 18 to 22 veterans a day to suicide. And a lot of them are coping with very serious traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of them were handed a bunch of opioids when they got home or came off the battlefield, and they got hooked, and they can't get off of it. Some of them are addicted to alcohol, which is a form of medicating and forgetting. So it is promising that the VA is trying out different methods, and then we now have this additional program, the CHOICE program, where if you can't get in for treatment on a timely basis, you can, in effect, go and get treatment in the community, and it'll be reimbursed, because we have got to go to best practices, go to the research, figure out what will work for everybody, but especially for our veterans, because when you're losing 18 to 22 people a day, that is just a terrible admission of failure on the part of our country, on the part of the VA, on the part of treatment. So yes, I think it's imperative that we focus on veterans, and we need to do it in a way where we really ramp up the research quickly about what's working and what isn't. And there is no one-size-fits-all. You know, that's why we need a number of treatment modalities, as they say, so that we can have a menu for people to choose from before they get discouraged and give up because what they are being offered is not adequate. So I feel passionately about this. I think it is one of the highest responsibilities we have, and I'm not satisfied at all that we are doing enough to reach out and help our vets, and there's nobody who deserves it more than they do.
Thank you. I see this young lady here in the aisle with the mask. Yes, please.
So this is a sort of a question and comment to all of you. My name is Ellen. I'm from Needham, and I'm part of the holistic health community, which I really thank the lady who's doing social work for mentioning. There's so much in herbal medicine, in acupuncture, in massage, and in all of these sorts of things. And also I'm going to really put out there the idea of nutrition. If you're bringing somebody off of addiction and you're feeding them high fructose corn syrup, you know, we all know about Monsanto, and you're feeding them lots of sugar and all these things that keep the cycle of addiction going, we need to make some shifts in how we help these people with nutrition, acupuncture, certainly spiritual, psychological, and emotional. The other thing I'm going to ask you, is there any way that we can really do the hard task of banning OxyContin and oxycodone and working towards other forms of pain relief from post-surgical to whatever it is? Because when we were all kids, some of us who are older in the room, there was not a heroin crisis because there wasn't the gateway drug of the oxycodone and the OxyContin. I'm going to ask you to address that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Maura, would you like to comment on that?
Well, let me just offer this in response. I mean, there's so many things that I like about Hillary Clinton's plan, but a couple things I like about it. One is it does talk about the need for treatment and expand. And we talked about this, the importance of alternatives to painkiller medication. Part of that is making sure you can afford it, right? And not just that they're available, but that you have insurance coverage. On the state level, we have a mental health parity law. There's a federal mental health parity law. And I know who I want appointing people at the Justice Department who are going to enforce that law. I also know who I want in control of dollars flowing to folks on mass health here in this state. Those are federal dollars, folks. Who do you think is going to control that program and consider how and to what extent we're going to expand formularies to cover alternatives to what I would agree with you, deadly stuff out there. Maybe has a place, but we need to rein it in, as Secretary Clinton articulated. So I offer that in response. It's something that we've talked about.
And I just want to touch real quickly on the drug addiction. When I was a member of the legislature, there was a bill filed by Representative Liz Maya, who's here with us today, co-sponsored by Representative Ruth Balzer and Kay Khan. It was the prescription monitoring program. And at the time, we did half of the story. And I think since that time, the Attorney General has taken that issue up. If we have an accurate monitoring program where doctors actually monitor and put down and we can follow to see where the drugs are prescribed, and on top of that, if we educate doctors in America that write these prescriptions, understanding that they're highly addictive and it's not simply just prescribing them, there's a way of having drugs that are needed for pain and pain management done properly, but also monitored on behalf of our state, by the way, which will save money nationwide with abuse on Medicaid and Medicare, which that money then can be reinvested into other programs that we need to do. So there are definitely ways to do. I just want to say one last thing, and then I won't talk for the rest of the day, because I want to hear the Secretary. There's a lot of people, your hands up. You're not all going to be able to be answered. Think about and listen to the language that the Secretary is using. She understands this epidemic. And when you have somebody who's taking this to the stage to actually have a conversation on a stage that cares about people, it will be very important for us because she understands it. And the people in recovery know what I mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This gentleman here. Yes.
How are you doing? This is pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a Boston medical center. I also work for the VA. So I see both state and federal. I just saw 20 patients with opioid use disorder. And I know we are kind of concentrating on opioids, but substance abuse or substance dependence or substance use disorders is not just opioids, right? We're talking about marijuana. We're talking about cocaine. We're talking about painkillers, right? Alcohol is legal. So if we're going to ban Oxycontin, why don't ban alcohol? It's tough because alcohol use disorder kill people, right? People withdraw from alcohol. So I guess that's a comment. But my question is, I read your plan on online, right? And I didn't see anything that mentioned training for medical school or myself, that I'm a resident, right? And I'm applying to addiction fellowship now for next year, right? I do research too, and it's so hard to find funding, okay, to do research about stigma. That's a big word. Stigma is a huge word. So hard. Took me a year to get funded and 3 months to get RB approval on the VA, and I'm trying to help. So that's one concern. And the only the second concern is that there is no money to fund the fellowships, right? And the only institutional organization that's funding fellowships is the VA. So there is no state funding for fellowship in addiction, okay? So that's a big deal. There is one position right now I'm applying to Pennsylvania. There's 2 positions in Pennsylvania, and come on, we need more than 2 doctors a year. In Massachusetts, have like 5 positions, right? And they're all run by the VA. So we need more from the state. So I agree with you. We're losing this war.
Thank you. Well, first of all, can I just say thank you for taking this on and making it what sounds to be your life's work, to specialize in this and try to help people. Thank you for that. And, you know, my plan does have a section about retraining and training doctors and nurses, pharmacists, and others to understand more about addiction, to realize that even if they are, you know, not a psychiatrist, they are going to maybe contribute to it by what they prescribe in whatever treatment they are doing. But I love your idea about more funding for fellowships and more funding for research, and it's part of the larger problem we've got because unfortunately, the Congress has cut back on funding for the National Institutes of Health, the National Institute of Mental Health. We need to be upping our funding and our research and our science-based work at the federal level, including the VA, and I'm going to steal your idea about fellowships regarding addiction, so it's now part of my plan.
Thank you. This gentleman here in the white shirt, please.
Treatment and recovery is a wonderful thing. What I'd like to hear addressed here is, you know, I've witnessed overdoses happening in 68 to 72 in Harlem and Roxbury, and so it's not a new thing. It's been an epidemic for years. And like Annie said, it's like reared its head in the suburban communities, and now we're taking action. But there's a long way to go to get to treatment, to get to recovery. And like one word that I don't hear often at these forums is harm reduction and the voice of the drug user. Like the drug user that has to struggle out there for 10, 20, 30 years. Now, they don't just fall into recovery, okay? And we have to keep them alive. And I know the Narcan is wonderful. There's a federal ban still on syringe access. And syringe access isn't giving somebody a needle. It's telling somebody that I care about you. It's engaging an unengaged population of folks that eventually you can talk to, move along the continuum of care till they enter treatment. And I think we need like some debate on that federal ban, some like more access to Narcan in the drug-using community for people with substance use disorder, not substance abuse, not addiction. They have a substance use disorder just like an eating disorder. And I'd just like to see a little more of that addressed. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I think you raised some incredibly important points in that we need the voice of those who are using. That is the way in which we can make an impact on this disease. And we hear that voice every day at the Demick Center. And what we hear is that we do need access to clean needles. We do need access to more Narcan. They want the training for the Narcan, and that's what we need to provide. And from what I'm hearing from Secretary Clinton, she is supportive of these issues. And I'm really pleased that we are having this conversation because this is exactly what we need. Ma'am, right next to him, this is the last question, unfortunately, that we can take. This is a great discussion, and it needs to continue beyond today. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to piggyback on the comment about the finance, the money that's being spent on this. I'm a Boston public school teacher, but I also work out of Demick. I'm the person who takes your 3-year-olds into Boston public schools.
Thank you.
But my point is that we just really need to spend the money and draw some attention also to the young children, because the young children, we as a school department are spending more and more money on special education. These are not the children that are getting into the charter schools. These are the children that Boston Public Schools is spending the money on, and the drugs that their parents are using. I mean, unfortunately, we recently lost some very young children, and you hear about it in the news. These are the children that we really need to focus on also.
Thank you.
I think all of us agree with that. We need a national awareness program. I know the mayor's got an officer recovery corps that is beginning to really make a difference here. The Gloucester example, other police departments are trying to reach out, increase awareness. I'm looking for really good ideas for how to reach young kids. Because we do have a lot more research, we do know more, and we need to try out different approaches. I'm also really hoping that we can get some online programs that have peer-to-peer kind of mentoring connection so that people in recovery, people who are looking to get into recovery, family members who might not either yet feel comfortable seeking out help or maybe in a remote area where it's difficult to get, will be able to do that. I just think we have to really open our minds and our hearts to how we treat this issue and look for the best ideas we can get. You know, I've laid out my ideas. I've already amended it today. That's good. That's what we should be doing. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't think anybody does. I want us to all be part of, as I think it was said over here, it's a real movement. The police chief in Gloucester, it's a movement. And if it's a movement, then it needs to really build up a head of steam and create more opportunities for people to come together, to talk with each other, to figure out what each of us can do individually. And the awareness is key to this. That it has to start with awareness. And, you know, maybe, Mayor, you could just say a word about what you're doing on that or what you think needs to be done.
Well, I think a lot of great points were made today, and there's a lot of different recovery procedures that we could use in the recovery addiction services, whether it's holistic or it's yoga or it's detoxes or it's treatment or even Suboxone and other ways of delivering services. But I think what we're doing in Boston, we created the Office of Recovery Services, which Jen Tracy is leading. We're working on making sure that as we look at delivering approaches, we're delivering different approaches. And there's no one system. When people go to detox, they hear a different message. Some people get it the first time they go to detox, and it might be the first speaker at the first meeting they hear that night, and they stay sober for 20 years. Other people go to detox, and they go in and out, in and out, in and out. And eventually, we need to make sure the treatment is there for them. So there's no one delivery service. And again, I think it's important for all of us today, and Jack mentioned it, to keep this conversation alive, because this conversation didn't happen by accident. And for whatever reason the conversations happen in America today, it doesn't matter. We're having the conversation, and we can save tens of thousands of lives of young mothers and young fathers and young grandmothers and young grandfathers out there if we continue to move forward. So I just want to thank first of all, thank the Secretary for her great work in being here today and talking about this issue on a national scale. I also want to thank the Attorney General, who's been in office now, going into her 10th month, and she's already done so much in the area of addiction. Joanne Peterson's being humble. I can't tell you the amount of people that she has impacted, not just families that are going through struggles or families that have lost loved ones, but legislators that she went into their office and convinced them onto why they should vote for more additional funding. I want to thank Joanne. And lastly, Dr. Jordan to my left, what she has done at Demick. It's absolutely incredible. And somebody once said, it takes a village. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And thank you to this incredible panel and for your leadership.
And lastly, Dr. Jordan to my left, what she has done at Demick. It's absolutely incredible. And somebody once said, it takes a village. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And thank you to this incredible panel and for your leadership.
Almighty God, as we pause here this evening in this time of turmoil, Father, we just ask that you help us to understand. Father, help us to gain wisdom in what has happened, and help us to work together, draw together, be closer to one another, and be understanding of one another. Lord, I just ask that you be with us gathering here this evening. Those that are homes and that cannot make it, I ask that you be with them also. Father, we just pray your name. And we just ask you to bless each of us as we go our way. And Father, we just thank you for the doctors, the nurses, and the medical staff, the police, the firemen, the first responders, Lord. We just ask that you give them a special blessing for doing what they did and for responding as quick as they did. Father, all this I ask in your precious name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Good evening. I'm Kate Brown, serving as Oregon's governor. We don't know why this happened. We only know that we are called to come together as a community to banish fear and affirm love, to care for and comfort one another, to be a strong and supportive community. And in our sorrow, we will remember and honor those lost here today. And in this way, they will live forever in our hearts. May peace be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, friends. I'm Rita Cavan. I'm the president of UCC. And I want to thank all of you for being here this evening and supporting us. Can I ask everybody who's a student to raise their hand or shout out? I promise that we will do everything we can to make your return to campus feel safe and loving and comfortable. And will everybody who's staff or works at UCC make some noise? Thank you for your compassion, your leadership, stepping up to the plate, doing every single thing that you could to help people today. Can I ask anybody from Roseburg that isn't a student or an employee but is here because they love the college to make some noise? We hear you, and the world hears you, and the nation hears you, and we know you're strong. And a beautiful thing about Roseburg is how much love there is here. So I'm going to ask everyone here to do me a favor. If you think about trying to help us and you feel angry, please stay away till you don't feel angry. If you want to help us and you have love in your heart and you can go up to people who need a hug or need compassion or need to be directed to mental health services and counseling, you're invited to come help us. But anger caused this, and we can't have anger around us right this minute. We need love and compassion and healing, and it's going to take a long time. And I want to thank the governor for coming down, and all of law enforcement that rushed to help us, and everyone in the community who has opened their doors to us today. This is a terrific, terrific community, and we can rise above this pain and focus on helping one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming tonight on what I think is likely the saddest day of each of our lives. I'm Lance Cawley from the city of Roseburg, and I had truly hoped to never address a crowd like this. What I would really like you all to do, as Rita said, about 11 your hearts, please pray for the families.
Copy.
Who still are unsure where their loved ones are. Please support your friends and your family, and please support the families in our community who clearly have lost people near and dear to them. And please understand that this is a time where we all need to pull together, help each other, and help this entire community get through this. This is a terrific outpouring of love for the people who have showed up. I'd like to truly thank the governor and the other folks from around the state who helped us today, helped the families, and please keep them in your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you all for coming tonight. This is amazing. This is why it's the greatest honor in my life to be a Douglas County Commissioner. And my name's Chris Boyce, and it's a tragic day in Douglas County. But it's a day that we'll all remember, and it's an opportunity for us to all come together as a community. And I thank you so much for it. I never knew that when I decided to run for this office that this is what I was signing up for. But it's an honor to be here for all you folks. And I thank you so much for your outpouring of support for the families, for the law enforcement officers who did a fantastic job today. And thank you again very much for being here. I'm going to leave you with one last challenge. I want you all to understand that this is not about the shooter. I challenge you all to never utter his name. This is about the families, this is about the victims, this is about our community, and this is about the tragic loss that we all suffered today, and this is not about the shooter.
My name is Gail Kuntz. This is Chelsea Brown. There was a mention on Facebook that a candlelight vigil should happen, and Chelsea messaged me, and immediately we started getting donations from local businesses for the candles, for the cups, for the lighters, for the water, and the whole community just absolutely came together. This is a tragedy, but like as the news reporters and everyone has been asking me, what will make this happen? And it's like, it's not going to tear us apart. It's going to bring us together. And looking at everyone standing here,
well, to say
tonight,
it's been a very difficult day
together,
here, Amy, certainly doesn't even begin to come close. This is a live look at a vigil happening right now in Stewart Park here in Roseburg. Governor Kate Brown just took to the podium, also a leader of Umpqua Community College, as a sea of people gather here tonight by candlelight to grieve, to mourn together, to honor the victims. And we want to let you listen in live here for just a moment.
I cannot believe how everybody came together so fast. I want to thank everyone that volunteered, that helped me, that helped her, that just gathered at 6 o'clock for us to be here. I don't know what to say. I'm dumbfounded like everybody else. But we are strong, and we're going to continue to be strong. And again, thank you for all your help, and let's pray for all the families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, a live look at a vigil happening right now here at Stewart Park in Roseburg. Every direction I turn right now, all I see are families, students,
I'm Jeff
children
Cruz. I'm your state
together
senator.
tonight, starting to
Today didn't
realize
go
the
the way I
full
had it
impact
planned.
of what has happened here in this community
It
just
didn't
a
go
few
that way for any
short
of us.
hours ago.
But I want you to look around at everybody. There is no community like Douglas County and Roseburg. So, in an era in this country where everybody focuses on themselves, we are not going to do that. Okay? This community, time after time, has stepped up to the plate and taken care of each other. This tragedy could be our golden moment. So I want you all to commit to bringing us back from this. Thank you.
Roseburg strong.
We don't have any more speakers for you this evening, but we just would encourage you to take time and share with one another and support each other. If you need prayer, if you need somebody to talk to, reach out. This is our community. This is not just Umpqua Community College. Umpqua Community College is made up of the whole of the county, and that's represented here. And we want to thank you for coming out tonight. Everybody hold up their candles. UCC strong. Thank you, everyone.
And we're going to head over to the Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance event with Joe Biden from earlier this evening.
I believe that future historians of that institution will identify him as one of the 2 or 3 great legislators of our era. Men who had not just the courage and vision to write important legislation, but the tenacity and the skill to see it into law. An event that rarely occurs now in the modern Senate. I think probably Joe Biden and Ted Kennedy will be the 2 most highly rated by future historians. I saw Joe Biden take complex legislation with many, many moving parts, and over the course of not months but years, worked diligently to persuade senators on both sides of the aisle to act in the nation's interest. And I think it's significant in the light of what we see now in our Congress, that as many Republicans as Democrats regarded Joe as a friend, a man who could be trusted, a man whose word was his bond and who had only the national interest at heart. As Vice President, we've all seen him be of great support to our President and to our country. There's a limited time because the Vice President has to go on to another event, and I know you came this evening's event to hear him, not me. Keep going, but I just say, after one particularly very, very difficult legislative battle in the Senate, an important one, over the Clean Air Act. It passed by one vote, and Joe Biden cast the deciding vote. And when it was over, I walked over to him and I said to him, Joe, you've got guts. And believe me, Joe Biden does have guts, along with brains, courage, integrity, and eloquence. It's my great honor to present to you my friend, the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
I've got to leave now. I don't want to turn this into a mutual admiration society. That old joke, if my father were here, he'd believe it. If my mother were here, she'd wonder whether we were talking about my younger brother. But folks, I was really proud to serve in the United States, and I'm proud to be Vice President, but I consider myself a Senate man more than anything else. I served there for a long, long time. Matter of fact, George had left before I left, and when I was elected my second term, it was the year I got elected Vice President at the same time. Because of a quirk in the law in Delaware, I had to run for both offices. And it was time for me I got sworn in, and there were 13 days of legislation before I left to be sworn in on January 20th, the President to be Vice President of the United States. And the Senate historian came in, and they do what they call a history minute in the caucuses, the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus, once a week. And they come in and say, on this day in 1890, such and such happened. And so the Senate historian walked in on my last day at the luncheon and said, the Vice President-elect's colleagues should know, and he was trying to make me feel good, that there are only 13 people in American history who've ever served as long as Joe Biden. And I thought, oh my God, how could that be? But the point is, I've known an awful lot of senators, and you all know Joe. Two people who I served with for 36 years. Two men with more integrity in their little finger than most people have in their whole body. Were a senator named Mike Mansfield from Montana, I used to refer to him as Iron Mike, who served when I got there in 72, and George Mitchell. And George made my job as chairman of Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees for a total, overlapping. I had those positions for 25 or so years. Made it work for me. So I want to thank George. And as many of you have probably heard, there was another shooting today at a community college in rural Oregon. I don't have the details yet, but unfortunately, this has been happening far too often. The estimates are there's somewhere between 10 and 13 dead students, and somewhere between 15 and 25 additionally seriously wounded. So I want to say at the outset here, as you all know, there's nothing, or there may be, there's few things worse than getting that phone call saying is gone. Your child is gone. Or your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife. And folks, part of the dysfunction of our political system today is that there is an overwhelming consensus in America on two things that are equally defensible. The Second Amendment, insane gun legislation relating to background checks and the ability to... The Second Amendment doesn't say you can own a bazooka. It doesn't say you can own an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's the ability of the government to limit the type of weapon that is available. And although we don't have enough information now, for me to comment on the specifics. My guess is I'm prepared to bet you that it was a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon. I don't know that yet, but that'd be my guess. For so many people to be shot in such a short amount of time. We're basically the only civilized country in the world where we have these massive murders in our country. And 87% of the American people agreed with the proposal I put together for the president on background checks and gun safety. Even over 60% of NRA families, National Rifle Association families, support it. So folks, I cite that as part of the dysfunction because we're able to have decided minorities prevent consensus from occurring. Which doesn't directly lead into what we're talking about today, but because my wife, I think, I'm not positive, this is the only first or second lady that teaches that is a full-time job for the last 7 years. She teaches 15 credits. She has her 2 masters and a doctorate. She teaches at a community college. And it brings home every time something happens in the school just how the safest place on earth should be. Our schools and our colleges. But that's for another day. So my thoughts and prayers, I'm sure along with yours, with the families who have lost folks today. You've been discussing, and you've had a long day, and I understand you're all day tomorrow, you've been discussing a lot of consequential issues facing the world, from public health issues to fights against extremism. And all these things are going to take time to impact on. But I want to make the point the founders of this forum, I think, believe, and I'm confident that if we focus all the stakeholders on these problems, there's not a problem we cannot solve. So I say to Nick and Matt, and understand Mom's here today. Mom's here today. Mom would, as they say, Mom, as they say in Southern Delaware, they speak with accent. You've done good with that boy. You've done good with that boy. Thank you for what you've done. And I understand this is the 5th anniversary of this forum, and it's an honor to be here, addressing the important issues that facing the country and the world requires immense determination. The combinations of everyone who has a stake in the shared success of the outcome of the issues you've raised, and that's why I admire Concordia so much. 5 years ago, you brought together the brightest minds of all sectors of society, government, policymakers, business executives, nonprofits, academics, to deal with the vexing problems the world faces. And now you're launching a Concordia campaign to focus on the scourge of human trafficking, which affects every country and every society. And defeating it is going to take a hell of a lot of coordination and work because there's so many moving parts. And it's vital to our future because societies where human trafficking is the norm, people live in fear literally of letting their child walk out the front door of their home. Schools are viewed as targets and not havens. Children don't have the opportunity to live their full potential. Investors avoid rather than invest in the communities that are deteriorating because of it, that need help badly. And it's a stain on the reputation of so many countries. Whether we're talking about poverty or human trafficking or generating an environment that can attract business to generate jobs and opportunity, all these things are impacted, in my view, if you'll forgive me, by three overriding concerns that overarchingly affect the possibility of making progress in all the things you talked about. The first is endemic corruption, state-sponsored corruption. Some of you have heard me say in speeches I've made on behalf of the administration that with regard to Russia in particular, but China to some degree, there are two new foreign policy weapons in the arsenal of any of those two countries. One is the use of oligarchs and endemic corruption to undermine the stability of governments. And the second is the use of energy as a weapon. But corruption is a cancer that eats away at the body politic that is designed to unite societies in order to be able to function. Corruption siphons away resources. It stunts economic growth. It prevents the establishment of government that people will respond to, government institutions that are required and necessary for a civilized society to function. From a court system you can trust to police agencies that you can rely on. But most importantly, it's the ultimate affront to the dignity of all people. Whether it's in Latin America, in the Northern Triangle, or Eastern Europe, or Southeast Asia, or Africa, it affects the ability to make progress on almost any front. Where corruption lives, almost everything else atrophies. Although our government uses both incentives as well as disincentives to impact on and ease corruption in these countries, we don't have the capacity to do it on our own. Those elements in governments that are rife with corruption, even they have good people inside, but are deathly afraid to do anything about it because there are no institutional or power centers that they can rely on to support their effort to speak out and speak up. Without the support of the business community or civil society or academia, they're left powerless to do what they know has to be done. Where a judicial system is corrupt, it's not possible to grow a business. Where intellectual property is stolen, it's not possible to innovate. Where media does not function freely, it's not possible to hold the powerful accountable. Let me give you a few examples. The president has asked me to be the point person on Ukraine and Russia's, I'll use the word accurately, invasion of Ukraine, as well as the Northern Triangle of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which is a source of incredible instability in the isthmus. When the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine became independent. A chance for a newfound democratic institutions to flourish, but Russia found other ways to control Ukraine with the use of oligarchs and corruption and energy as foreign policy tools. Though the Soviet Union collapsed and Ukraine got its freedom, nothing happened except corruption took root deeply in Ukrainian society. And then along came the Maidan, the second revolution after the Orange Revolution, where the people of Ukraine took to the streets and to the town center called the Maidan, demanding that their government be accountable. The then leader, quote, popularly elected leader, whom I was on the phone with, urging him not to have snipers begin to shoot. He didn't shoot, but he shot out of the country, leaving behind his own zoo, literally a zoo he had, and incredible wealth and mansions, demonstrating for all the world to see just how thoroughly corrupt the government was. But there was a demand for freedom. We made it clear to the newly elected government, and Mr. Poroshenko, I've spent many, many days in Ukraine, and with before and after. Mr. Poroshenko came along, and he began to build he was an oligarch himself. But I judge people by their motives when they, quote, give it the office. He lost billions of dollars in investments he had in Russia, in his chocolate empire, in order to try to begin to set up a democracy. He's outperformed European expectations and most people's expectations to try to build a democracy. But the constant refrain the President authorized me to speak to was, you must demonstrably move on corruption in your country. They've been working hard to reform their system. It's beginning to pay off. New laws on asset disclosure, independent National Anti-Corruption Bureau, greater government transparency, and so much more. I speak with President Poroshenko and the Speaker, Mr. Yatsenyuk, almost weekly to continue to bang away at why they have to take on risk themselves the endemic corruption, some of which still exists. And I use you as an example. Some of the leading corporate executives in America, some of the great multinational companies, I'm told, spoke here today. From Coca-Cola to others, I'm sure, that were here. Because they desperately want you investing in Ukraine. They know their entire future lies in the EU and in the West. And the point you have to keep making to them as they approach you is, we will not play if you continue to be paid. We will not engage if you do not act. I was with Mr. Poroshenko on Monday this week at the United Nations. We talked about the great progress, and actually Tuesday, resisting the Russian invasion and attempts to collapse his government. We talked about the need to maintain support in the European Union. I'm going to say something that will be characterized as classically Biden. I'm going to tell you the straight truth, unvarnished. Europe is not enamored with continuing to impose sanctions on Russia because it's costing them some at home. The only reason they are is the President has been emphatic that Russia must pay for this invasion, or we will pay later. The President loves always quoting, he calls them Bidenisms. You know, it's either pay me now or pay me later, and reality has a way of intruding. If we do not sustain, as long as Ukraine continues to deal as it has, if we do not sustain them, the price will be much larger. Watch what happens in the rest of Eastern Europe. Watch what happens in NATO. And so, we've talked about how cohesion in the EU will crack if Ukraine reverts to its decades-long history of corruption. I know tomorrow you're going to hear from she's not only bright, but a really, really courageous young woman, Paula Dobransky. I know her. I met her on the Maidan. She risked her life. She was part of civil society. The hardest transition to make in any of these developing countries who are seeking to come out from under the control of either oligarchs, dictators, and or come out from under control of spheres of influence, is for civil society to begin, after all the years in opposition, to be willing to get engaged and actually run for political office. to actually dirty their hands and get into the game of trying to change the legislative process. This young woman you're about to hear from tomorrow did just that. She's become a clarion voice. She's been threatened physically, politically, but she speaks out. And I can't tell you, Mark, how happy I am you are showcasing her. Because there are young women and men like her in all the countries that are struggling to find a way now. But Kyiv needs a vocal private sector, a vocal business community, a vocal civil society, demanding transparency. All the other things you're doing to try to change the life and circumstance of so many people around the world are going to have little effect. To all you business leaders, as I said, Ukraine and other parts of the world desperately want American investment, business know-how, research, and development. Every time I go, and I've now traveled over 1 million, I guess, a couple 100,000 miles since I've been vice president. I've met with almost every major head of state. And every developing country or country trying to emerge, you know what they ask? Can you bring Silicon Valley with you? Well, you think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. You all know it. You're all extremely well-traveled and sophisticated. But it won't make much difference if we can't deal with the corrupt systems. Make it absolutely clear you're ready, but you will not engage unless officials are not engaged in taking kickbacks, unless there's transparency in the law, unless contracts are protected, unless there's a judicial system that you can count on. That's the only way it will change. It will not be by the exhortations of Vice President Joe Biden or President Barack Obama. Another example close to home is the Northern Triangle. There's no reason why Central America can't be the bridge between North and South America. For the first time in anyone's life, you can look at the hemisphere from Canada to the tip of Argentina and envision a continent that is democratic, middle class, and free. It's within our reach. It can be transformative. But what we have is at a minimum, beyond Venezuela and a few other places, we have this incredible bottleneck in Central America. Imagine what you can do in the business community if you're able to build the electric grid needed to bring energy to 70% of populations that have no energy. Imagine the entrepreneurial fire you could light if we actually build a gas pipeline from Texas through Mexico down across the isthmus. Imagine what is possible. Imagine how instead of 70% of the youth in each of those countries saying their desire is to leave for America and not stay home. Imagine what we can do if we can begin to build a civil society for them as well as our own naked self-interest. But Central America is still mired in corruption. That's why when the president asked me to manage the policy in the hemisphere, I spent time in each of those countries, meeting with each of those leaders, putting together what they asked me to do because I had drafted Plan Colombia back in 2000. Well, before that, it finally passed, which transformed Colombia, which was on the brink of becoming nothing more than a narco state. That's not about me, it's about the Colombians. And they said, will you draft such a law for us? The president authorized me to do that with the help of the Congress. But the sine qua non for proceeding was dealing with corruption. At the end of the Civil War in Guatemala, the United Nations put in place the Guatemalan Anti-Corruption Commission. They call it CICIG, after the Civil War. And it did great work cleaning out corruption. But the leadership, as I put together this plan with them signing on because they desperately need help, didn't want to renew its mandate. But with the President's permission, I insisted we would not help unless they renewed the mandate. And what's the result? The President is thrown out of office, will probably be thrown in jail. The Vice President is behind bars. The bulk of the leadership is thoroughly corrupt and is in jail, going to jail, or in exile. They've elected somebody who's going to have a tough time. He looks like he's squeaky clean, a comedian with no past electoral experience except that he looks like he is thoroughly committed to continuing to clean up the system. The Guatemalan people have turned out in the hundreds of thousands because they think for the first time they have a chance. They have a chance. They remain committed to purging from government and governmental institutions corruption. We have to help, but the same needs to be done in the rest of Central America to open up the enormous possibilities, establish an electric grid that will bring light to enormous segments of the community, not unlike what we did in the TVA back in the 30s. And I don't have to tell those of you who are in business the possibilities of pipelines, shipping, business opportunities, expansion of ports and airports, and the opportunities that are available to you. But I'm here to ask you for your help in a public-private partnership to insist on standards that will give these countries a chance to deliver for their people. And it can only be done with more transparency, openness, and giving people the opportunity to participate. The second issue that sort of overrides all that you're talking about and we'll talk about is the issue of sustainable development and extreme poverty. I'd like to very briefly focus on one issue, what the President's initiative in Africa called Power Africa. We're providing not only resources and expertise, but incentives to the continent of Africa to invest in clean energy technology to bring power to people across the continent and also generate jobs. A few weeks ago, I met in my office with President Yahoo of Benin, a small West African country about the size of Ohio. Together, we signed a compact to help modernize their power sector, which can again transform that country. With our help, banks will lend money, companies will lay wires, entrepreneurs will open business, and people will rise out of poverty because they can turn on the lights, figuratively and literally. The initial $7 billion commitment from the U.S. government has mobilized more than $20 billion off the sidelines from the private sector and will bring electricity to more than 60 million African homes. Neither the President nor I think government is not the answer. The free enterprise system is the answer. But what we found is, if we engage in set goals in the Recovery Act, we spend over $800 billion. I might add, as every outside group has shown, with less than 0.25% waste or fraud. Darrell Issa, the Republican from California, who strongly opposed the act, has hailed it as the model for how we should spend money when we spend it. The reason I mention this to you is that we have an opportunity, a transformative opportunity, to bring power and empower people to do things they never could do before. Grow businesses, teach classes at night, connect with distant families. Many don't understand that giving people hope is sometimes more consequential than giving them help. Everyone in this room understands it. And in this case, we're doing both. But we have to do more of it around the world. People are better than we give them credit for if given a chance. The last issue that needs to be faced is the issue of a generation. It will be the issue for several generations, the dispositive issue. And it overrides every other problem we face. We can literally, not figuratively, be overwhelmed in all of our efforts if we don't deal with it. It's climate change. Not only is it an issue of life and death long term, it's a national security issue. Most people talk about climate change in terms of the science of it. Now, a lot of our friends on the other team, they don't think there's global warming. They also deny gravity and a few other things. It's just kind of fascinating. But the one thing that gets the attention of my conservative friends, and by the way, let's be honest, they're winners and losers as we deal with climate change. And we have to be careful to take care of the losers. For example, fossil fuel, coal in particular, is a particular culprit as we switch to natural gas, which is cleaner, and to renewable energy, which is even cleaner. But we cannot leave behind an entire way of life, not just a way of living, but a way of life. I come from the coal regions of Scranton, Pennsylvania. As a kid, we moved because coal died, although my family never worked in the mines. We have an obligation to help those folks in West Virginia, Southern Ohio, Wyoming transition, because they're good, decent people doing hard work for a long, long time. But what gets the attention of my conservative friends when I talk about climate change, and it surprises me, is that the Department of Defense several years ago put together a very thick compendium on global warming, saying that global warming is a threat multiplier. They talk in no-nonsense terms about our security and our stability. They point out that as time goes on and the physical changes continue to occur, conflicts will occur. Millions of people are displaced, destabilizing existing governments. Those of you who are interested and know a little bit about the war in Darfur, and I've been to Darfur like many of you, that's a consequence of extreme drought, eliminating arable land, and two peoples, African both, but Christian and Muslim, fighting over the arable land. Tens of thousands of people slaughtered and massacred. Look at what's happening in terms of the displacement that's taking place as a consequence of Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan. 1.5 million people fleeing to Europe, coming close to destabilizing some of those governments. Imagine what happens, as the military points out, if sea level rise 1.5 foot more, and you have millions of people in South Asia, literally unable to live in their homes with mass migration. That's the stuff of which conflict is made. That's the stuff which destabilizes governments. That's the stuff of war. Reality has a way of intruding, and it is intruding already. Everyone seems extremely surprised that President Xi, whom I know well because I spent a lot of time with him when he was vice president. I traveled for 5 days with him in China, and he 4 days with me in the United States at the request of President Hu and President Obama, so we get to know one another. Everybody said, look at Xi. All of a sudden, he's focused on climate change. There's two things populations don't like, whether they are communists, fascists, democracies, whatever form of government they have. They abhor corruption because they don't benefit, and they don't like dying because of the environment. Without water that's clean, air that you can breathe. The estimates are that in China alone, they say 1,500,000 die per year because of smog. Other estimates, I will not challenge their estimates, say as many as 4 million people a year die. You want to get the attention of a government, have them do nothing about that. Raise your hand if you've been in Beijing in the last 2 years. You didn't do a lot of jogging in the streets, did you? I'm not being facetious. I'm not being facetious. So the point I'm trying to make is these are deadly serious issues that if we don't attend to them, and it's not the scope of what you're doing now, all the other things you have more influence on some of these issues than government does. When you stand up and say, no, we have to act. I spoke at a Goldman Sachs North American Energy Summit. I can't remember, I think it was in the spring. And some of you may have been there. Some of the most successful investors in the country. My recollection was there were about 150 people. And I asked those investors, what was the long play? I have the dubious distinction, not proud of it, of being listed as the poorest man in Congress. I think I'm joking, I wish it wasn't true. When I got sworn in as vice president, I did my financial disclosure statement. As my wife can say, you can Google this. Front page of the Washington Post said, quote, it's probable no man has ever assumed the office with fewer assets than Joe Biden. I assume they were talking financial assets since my net worth is between $50,000 and $150,000, not counting the equity in my home. So I'm no expert. But I asked, what's the long play? What's our energy future? And they responded. A number of major corporations are already pricing in the cost of carbon as much as $50 a ton. It's just a reality. Pay me now or pay me later. It's a cost. A cost. So when you speak in your communities, when you speak to my colleagues in the House and the Senate and state legislative bodies, play long, not short, okay? Talk about the need to actually respond to some of the obvious things where there's very little or no academic debate. People listen to you. Last month I was in California to announce a $102 million competitive grant to companies, businesses, universities, and research laboratories in 37 states working to reduce the cost of solar energy by 75% by the year 2000. Some of you know now that in terms of a kilowatt hour, wind energy is as cheap as coal right now. Because of some of you in this audience, we have radically reduced the cost of solar energy. Radically. We're on the cusp of making renewable energy competitive across the board with carbon-based fuels. On that same trip, I participated in the U.S.-China Summit, Leaders Summit on Global Warming in Los Angeles, which brought together not only leaders from China's federal government, as ours, but also from their state legislators, in effect, their governors. And the governors from 4 provinces in China that attended, the carbon they emit in those 4 provinces exceeds the carbon emissions from Japan and Australia combined. Japan, all of Japan, and or all of Australia. In 4 provinces. So what's happening is those local leaders are moving to raise the bar even higher than President Xi has agreed to with President Obama in cutting back emissions. Los Angeles and Beijing, two of the world's great cities, are working together on low-carbon urban planning, research projects, and technology exchanges. That's what we need to combat, at least in part, climate change. Partnerships at every level. City leaders working with their federal governments, governments working with the private sector, nonprofits, the academic community. That's how we'll find solutions. But I'm preaching to the choir here because this is all about public-private partnerships. Ultimately, partnerships do more than just take on real challenges we're seeing day to day. Challenges that affect people's daily lives. Partnerships are vital to helping generate a virtuous cycle. They create sustainable energy solutions and will position us to compete economically in the 21st century and create millions of new jobs. More jobs are created in the solar energy area than any other part of industry. Right here in the United States. And these are good paying jobs. These are middle class jobs. You can raise a family on. I know I'm referred to all the time in Washington as middle class Joe. In Washington, that's not meant as a compliment. That means you're probably not sophisticated if you're middle class. But I'm sophisticated about the middle class. Without us figuring how to deal them back into the game, ladies and gentlemen, you're all in trouble. When the middle class does well, business does very well. And the poor have a way up. And if the middle class continues to shrink, they are the glue that has held the political and social fabric of this nation together for the past 100 years. Because what's America about? I can describe America to you in one word: possibilities. Possibilities. And when people think their possibilities are no longer within their reach, things change. Things change. I have a lot of economists with me who are great academics, receive significant awards, and when I say middle class, the debate will begin: is it 51,500 or 52? Middle class is not a number. And I'll end with this. Middle class is a value set. Middle class in America means you're able to own your own home and not just have to rent it. That you can send your kid to a park where you know they're going to come home safely. That you can send them to a high school that you know if they do well, they were able to get to college, and if they get to college, you can pay to get them there. And when your mom dies, you can take your dad in when he's geriatric and care for him and hope your children never have to care for you. That's why we've been the most powerful nation on earth. That's the reason. And if you take a look at everyone from the IMF to Standard & Poor's, the greatest concern they have about economic growth is the concentration of wealth. I'm not Bernie Sanders. He's a great guy, by the way. No, he really is. I'm not a populist, but I'm a realist. If you make widgets, there's not enough people to buy your widgets, you're not going to do well. So, folks, we got a lot to do. We got a lot to do, but we have enormous possibilities with you all in the game. George used to always kid me in the Senate because I was quoting Irish poets. Everybody thought I quoted Irish poets because I'm Irish. That's not why I quote Irish poets. I quote them because they're simply the best poets in the world. No offense to my Greek friends, for literally no, but they're the best poets. And one of my favorite contemporary poets is Seamus Heaney. And he wrote a poem called The Cure at Troy. And there's a line, a stanza in that poem that better describes where we are right now, in my view, if we seize the opportunity. And I'll get out of your hair. The poem has a stanza that says, history teaches us not to hope on this side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, that tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history rhyme. I've been doing this for a long time, since I was a 29-year-old kid. I have never been more optimistic about the possibilities of this great nation. We have a chance, and I mean it, to make hope and history rhyme. We have a chance to bend history just a little bit. If we'll just get out of our own way. There's a reason why we're better positioned than any other nation in the world today. We have the greatest research university in the world. No other place in the world has what we have. We're the most agile venture capitalists in the world. We will, for the remainder of the two-thirds of this century, have the cheapest energy of any place in the world, North America. Your children will not talk about outsourcing. They'll be talking about insourcing. We have the most productive workers in the world. Every objective study shows American workers are 3 to 4 times as productive as workers in China, for example. And we have a court system that protects intellectual property and where everyone knows they can have their contractual disputes adjudicated fairly. So we're better positioned. We just need 2 things to lock it down. We need the best educated workforce in the world, and that's why we need your help in pushing for more investment in education. And 12 years of education is no longer sufficient. 14 is the minimum people need in America today. And secondly, we need a massive infusion of investment in our infrastructure. You will stay where you can get your product to market and raw materials as quickly to the floor as you can, or else you'll go where you can do it more quickly and economically. So we have great opportunities. And it really gets down to public-private partnerships. And you're the people in this room gathered here today that can do it. We need you. We need you badly. The country needs you. So I thank you for the technological capacity that you represent.
Well, looks like that is the end of my video. I wonder if I did not cut it all the way, or if it abruptly ended that way, but that's the end of my Joe Biden speech. I apologize. It is 9:01, which means if you are local, you can head over to Fox 10 Phoenix on Channel 10, or you can head over to fox10phoenix.com/live to watch our local TV news broadcast with John Hook and Carrie Lake. I was pitching some crazy stories to them, so hopefully you'll hear some of those specifically during the buzz. A pizza laminate necklace of the sweetest little boy that dressed up as a Secret Service agent and got to meet Hillary Clinton, and they're going to be talking about a new app that allows you to rate people. That sounds rude. So that's coming up right now on our the 9 o'clock broadcast. Actually, let's take a peek at it really quick.
Lieutenant Diane Douglas is ready to fix that. And today, she unveiled her new plan.
They may be rivals in the tech world, but these Valley internet companies coming together for a different type of competition, a ping pong tournament.
And it's considered the Yelp for people, a new app that will let you rate just about anyone, including your past romantic interests.
Valley students walking out of school this week, upset over their school's decision to remove several teachers and administrators. Parents even threatened to remove their students from Sequoia Pathway Academy because of all of this.
This has been a lot of drama out there. Tonight, parents and students demanding some answers as to why those administrators were let go in the first place. Fox 10's Danielle Miller was there at that meeting tonight. She joins us live from Maricopa. This has really gotten interesting, and for the students caught in the middle of this, it's pretty ugly.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Kerry, this meeting here tonight, pretty short and sweet. Now, there were no definite answers given about the current issues, but the assistant superintendent actually announcing tonight that she's going to be taking over the role for assistant interim principal for the school.
As a result of the recent events, Ed Key will be appointing a different superintendent to directly oversee all academic and personnel decisions for all of our Ed Key schools from this point forward.
That from Tamara Becker, the assistant superintendent of Sequoia Pathway's charter school, run by Ed Key, which has several other charter schools in the state. She announced at tonight's meeting she will be taking over the interim principal position after Superintendent Douglas Pike held an unexpected meeting Tuesday where Dean of Students Nate Lama and Assistant Principal Diane Silva were either forced to resign or were fired. This caused an uproar between parents, staff, and students. Some students even protested the resignation of the administrators, who they say were like family.
My understanding is that he actually walked in with empty boxes, a last paycheck, and a resignation letter, and an ultimatum: pick another school or resign.
Parents weren't able to ask questions about the situation at the meeting, and Becker couldn't say much, claiming it was a private personnel issue. Although parents want answers, they say tonight was a step in the right direction.
I think people are hearing what we have to say. You know, I know people wanted more answers. Unfortunately, I understand they can't give that, but I think our voices were definitely heard and we made an impact.
Without Lama and Sylvia, there's no pathway at all, and we need them here.
And fall break for the school does start tomorrow. Now, parents are hoping that after this week-long break, that when they come back, everything will be sorted out. In Maricopa, Danielle Miller, Fox 10 News.
Thanks, Danielle. The prime suspect in the I-10 freeway shootings pleads not guilty in court today to 15 felony counts. 21-year-old Leslie Merritt. He is accused in 4 of 11 confirmed shootings between August 22nd and September 10th. He's maintained his innocence all along, and his lawyer questions the evidence against him. His attorney saying that investigators, his own investigators, have gotten several leads that point to another person as the freeway shooting suspect.
One of those leads includes information about someone else who has claimed responsibility for at least some of the activity with which our client is charged. This is the product of our own independent investigation, and it's a lead that we're going to run down just like law enforcement would.
Merritt charged with carrying out a drive-by shooting and aggravated assault.
Another tragedy, this time on a college in Oregon this afternoon. A gunman walking into a classroom and opening fire, and it was ugly. 9 people would eventually be killed. More than a dozen others were wounded. The gunman later killed by police, and investigators are still trying to find a motive for this heinous act today.
All of this happening at Umpqua Community College. This is really south of where University of Oregon is. So just to give you an idea of the geography here. Tonight, folks, in the tiny town of Roseburg, several hours south of Portland, if you want to go that direction, they're holding a vigil for the students and the teachers who lost their lives today.
And we're now hearing from some of the students and the witnesses who watched this all play out right in front of them. Troy Hayden joins us live with more. Troy.
And state police aren't identifying this gunman right now, but authorities say he is a 26-year-old man. They're still trying to piece together exactly what happened and what may have caused him to do something like this, if we ever get those sorts of answers. One of the victims told him the shooter demanded to know victims' religions before he shot them. And those who survived in that building locked themselves inside classrooms until police showed up and the gunman was dead. We're also hearing from students and witnesses on campus as the shooting happened, including one student who says she'd only been at that school for 4 days total.
So then I looked out the window and there was a couple girls running, like sprinting away from the building, and then I hear screaming after that first gunshot. And then I looked out and I saw the people running, and I said to the teacher, we need to get out of here right now.
And they kept them away from us for a while. One girl came out wrapped in a blanket with blood on her, and they said they weren't.
Late tonight, federal authorities raided the gunman's home. They interviewed his neighbors, and one neighbor describing him as being extremely unfriendly. So we're following the story for you. We'll bring you updates as we get them here in the newsroom. Reporting live, Troy Hayden, Fox 10 News.
Thank you, Troy. And Arizona Governor Doug Ducey posting this message on Facebook today saying our hearts and prayers are with the people of Oregon as they cope with incredible tragedy and loss.
In the border battle tonight, 5 years after border agent Brian Terry was gunned down at the border, 2 men are found guilty in his murder. Prosecutors say back in 2010, Jesus Sanchez Meza and Ivan Soto Barraza were looking to rob drug smugglers in the Arizona desert when they shot at Terry's Border Patrol unit. Terry was shot in the back and killed. 2 guns from the scene were linked to the failed federal gun walking operation Fast and Furious, where the feds lost track of guns they were trying to follow back into Mexico. One of those guns used in Terry's murder. Terry's family relieved to finally hear the verdict in court.
And then when we were sitting there, my gut just told me, it's a done deal. We got it. So when she said those first words, guilty, I knew that the rest was all guilty.
The defendants were found guilty on 9 charges, including first-degree murder. They will be sentenced in December. Hurricane Joaquin continues to make its way toward the eastern coastline. We'll see how residents there are getting prepared for the first major storm of the hurricane season.
But next, they are fierce competitors in the technology sector. But today, these Valley tech companies put their differences aside for a friendly game of ping pong.
That's all for Fox 10. I'm not Vice President Joe Biden, although I could be. That's all for Fox 10 News now. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, but oh, Celeste is so pretty. We've got a Celeste Rodriguez commercial happening right now. She's so beautiful. That's all for Fox 10 News now. You can head over to fox10phoenix.com/live to continue to watch our local television broadcast. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. We will see you again tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and I will be back next week.